The Top 10 Lucky People Who Survived the Impossible, Part 2. Where luck exceeds the perseverance of the nature of humanity, the most amazing survival stories are born. Life can be delicate and painfully challenging. There is no end to the horrible circumstances that humans will turn their attention into, nor is there a restriction to what people are confident and eager to do to get out. With little abilities, a lot of courage, and bunch of luck, people have been able to survive some tremendous challenges. For today's video, we're going to talk about some survival stories that show incredible quantities of luck and unluckiness. Well, depending on how you look at them. But before we go any further, please like and subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get new excellent updates only us can provide. From the expanses of the water, the crushing of the ice, the depths of the sea, and the unforgettable feeling of being totally alone, here are the top 10 lucky people who survived the impossible. Number 10. Tsutomu Yamaguchi. Amazingly, astonishingly, this man witnessed 2 nuclear explosions at Ground Zero, and both lived to tell the tale. He was on a business trip to Hiroshima when an American bomber was discovered. He saw a huge light in the sky as it erupted 3 kilometers away from him. He was blown over, sustained serious burns, broke his ears, and was temporarily blinded. His hometown Nagasaki was struck by the second US nuclear bomb to hit Japan. With some 200,000 people dying from the attack, he is the only survivor of both bombings remembered by the government of Japan. He still lived at the age of 93. However, he started to suffer from radiation-related illnesses later in his life. Number 9. Paul Templar. This man who spent his 20s as a safari guide led him to end up in a hippo for an afternoon. A rover-sized monster hippo, about 4.5 meters long and 1.5 meters high, kicked one of his buddies out of his canoe. As he paddled towards his friend, the hippo cruised towards him, rippling the water like a torpedo, slashing through the water. The hippo swallowed Paul again easily for how many times? While Paul scratched and kicked it away, he realized that keeping the canine tusk of the hippos, which were boring through him, would not tear his flesh so much. It took Paul 8 unbearable hours to go to a hospital without even any painkillers. He claimed that the pain was so unbearable that he considered as suicide, but he luckily survived. Number 8. Matt Suter. Imagine relaxing on your couch, doing some sort of channel surfing. Suddenly, the floor begins to move like jello, the wall in front of you melts, and a 150-mile-per-hour tornado carries you 400 meters into the air for a nasty blast. There's no such thing as a trip to live. That is, unless you're Matt Suter. The 19-year-old Missouri native was in his grandma's trailer when a huge force struck the trailer, crushing everything in front of him. Matt was sucked out of the trailer. By the time he recovered consciousness, the twister had thrown him 400 meters away in a grass field. He surpassed the record for the longest distance a human being has ever survived. That record was initially held by a 9-year-old girl who rode a 300-meter tornado. Number 7. Harrison Okene. Some people would say that a bad day at Ocean is better than the usual day at the office. But Harrison Okene is not quite in agreement with that. Okene served as a cook on a tugboat passing through the stormy waters of the coast of Nigeria. Suddenly, a crooked wave crashed into the vessel and the ship started to sink. Harrison was the only survivor among the 12 team members. Faced with an astounding number of deadly threats and forced to learn how his crewmates were devoured by sharks, he began to lose hope. It took him 3 days to be rescued by divers who searched for survivors. Understandably, his miraculous escape was viral after it was shared online. Unsurprisingly, he never vowed to go near the sea again. Number 6. Aron Ralston. Ralston will forever be remembered as the man who cut off his hand to avoid the climbing accident that left him stuck between 2 boulders. He suffered for 3 days, before deciding to amputate himself in order to extricate himself. But after 2 days of trying different strategies, he almost gave up. He was finally found out by a European family in a campout, and he was rescued by authorities 6 hours after his self-amputation. It was realized just in time Ralston was on the verge of death from blood loss. He survives today, even taking outdoor expeditions and hiking trips when he doesn't make speeches or make movies about his life. 127 hours if you haven't seen it before. Now, we will take you to the top spot of amazing survival story. Number 5. Julian Kowipki. Julian Kowipki survived a plane crash just above the Amazon River in 1971. The 17-year-old girl was able to walk out of the accident with a lot of bruises and injuries. Julian Kowipki had 2 fantastic survival tales to share by the end of her ordeal. The lightning hit the flight she was into. She's been battered. She's been scratched. Her collarbone had been mom-broken. But she was alive, the only survivor on the flight, and now she's alone in the wilderness trying to survive again. But she was able to locate an encampment after 9 days. Number 4. Stephen Callahan. After successfully cruising across the Atlantic solo in a 6.5-meter sloop, Callahan began his journey home in January 1981. The storm around his boat one night did not worry him, but the hole a whale or shark had put in the hull of his boat in the dark of night in the middle of the storm. As the ship began to sink, Callahan repeatedly swung back into the sinking ship to pick up survival gear. With food and water for days, Callahan slammed into his 6-foot circular raft adrift 800 miles west of the Canary Islands. Callahan was eventually found by a fisherman off the coast of Guadalupe as birds and fish surrounded his raft, feeding the fish guts he had thrown back into the sea. He had been on the sidelines for 76 days, and that's unbelievable for you to survive.
Number 3. Angela Hernandez. Angela Hernandez was driving near Big Sur on Highway 1 to Southern California on her SUV as a small animal crossed the lane. Hernandez swerved to avoid it, and in doing so, she shot her SUV off the road and off the edge, tossing about 200 feet to a desolate, rocky beach. She had a brain hemorrhage, cracked ribs, broken collarbones, broken blood vessels in both eyes, and a broken lung. But she didn't die. She started walking along the shore for support. She's been walking for days. High above, she could see cars driving by the edge, but they couldn't see her or hear her cries before she was rescued. It wasn't until a few hikers scouted across the beach for fishing spots, came across her wrecked jeep and scoured the beach until they found Hernandez crumpled to sleep on some rocks. Eventually, the rescuers used ropes to get off the cliff and evacuate Hernandez to the hospital, finishing her 7-day nightmare. Number 2. Reshma Begum. Reshma Begum worked as a seamstress in a factory in one of the 18-story Rana Plaza buildings. She was fortunate enough to survive the blast, but she remained stuck under the debris. Luckily, she was able to find some water and food to last for 17 days before the rescuers had let her out. Approximately 2/3 of the more than 3,000 construction staff managed to escape. Yet as many as 1,500 could have been buried in ruins. With an official death toll of 1,050, families and emergency workers gave up hope of finding someone else alive. Rescue teams had given up hope of finding someone else alive in the Rana Plaza disaster, but not until they heard a slight tap in the collapsed building. They heard a woman who had been breathing through a pipe from inside the collapsed building and had suffered any serious injury, and that woman was Reshma Begum, who had been recorded as the only survivor that impossibly lived for 17 days inside the rubble Rana Plaza building.
Last but not the least, number 1. Roy Sullivan. The likelihood that anyone will be hit by lightning in a period of 80 years is around 1 in 10,000. And you can understand why they're saying that lightning doesn't strike twice, except to this man. Roy, a forest ranger in Virginia, apparently was a natural conductor of electricity. He beat the odds 7 times. In reality, this is the odds of being stuck 7 times in a lifetime as he did. I bet you don't even know what the number is. The chances are 1 in 10 octillion. Of course, because of his type of work, the chances will be lower for Roy because his work subjected him to more storms than the average person. He survived every jolt, but he was not unharmed. The last jolt sent him to the hospital with chest and stomach burns, but it also placed him in the Guinness Book of World Records for most lightning strikes survived. In the end, when Sullivan passed away, it was a self-inflicted bullet, not a bolt, that put him in. He was allegedly rejected in love, but I'd say it was more likely that he had enough of Zeus's thunderbolt. Survival stories amaze us and makes us aware that despite our weaknesses, there's a little warrior inside of us who's ready to take over when the road gets too rough. So which person did you think was the lucky one? And what kind of an ordeal would you like the least to have experienced? And if you know any other survival stories that were not mentioned on the list, please let us know in the comment section down below. If you're a true top 10 enthusiast, stay tuned as the next video is starting. Don't forget to hit the like button below and click subscribe for more amazing videos.